Part 123. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1222. Chapter 1222 is full of poisonous insects. A dangerous existence with the bloodline of the heavenly python. Think about it. If an ordinary Chi martial realm monk faces the siege of dozens of cold weather pythons whose strength is equivalent to that of a 9th level Chi martial cultivator, it goes without saying how miserable his fate will be. But no matter how dangerous the place is, you still have to look at the people. For example, Suchen, although he was walking on the soft snow, was extremely fast, and even the footprints he left behind were very shallow and almost indistinguishable, which shows how advanced his movement skills have been. Whoosh! A black shadow suddenly emerged from under his feet and went straight towards Suchen's throat. Aha! The dark star sword's cold light flashed, and the black shadow immediately split into 2 parts and fell to the ground. It turned out to be an ice scorpion as big as a palm. The ice scorpion that was chopped into 2 pieces has extremely strong vitality. Even after it has been cut into pieces, the hook at its tail is still stretching. The black liquid flowing out from the fracture instantly melted the ice and snow, emitting a pungent black smoke. Just after smelling it a little bit, Suchen immediately felt dizzy. Not daring to stay any longer, he used his body skills to quickly rush towards the top of the mountain. The top of Mengshan Mountain looks like a bamboo hat with its peak cut off, and the top forms a platform with a radius of several miles. It is scattered with strange gravels in dark colors, contrasting with the white snow. The cold wind howled, but it could not disperse the cold fog on the top of the mountain. Suddenly, with a snap, a black stone the size of a pumpkin rolled down, and out of the snow, a snake head as thick as an adult's thigh slowly stretched out. The snake's head is covered with scales, extending all the way to the snake's body buried in snow. What's strange is that the color of its scales is the same as the color of the gravel, which is as black as ink. Sometimes it is really difficult to tell whether it is a snake head or another strange-shaped stone. Hiss! The snake's head stretched out a scarlet snake tongue and puffed it in the air several times. It seemed to feel some strange smell and suddenly let out a hissing sound. As if receiving some signal, gravel rolled down in a radius of dozens of feet around the snake head. Suddenly, countless dark snake heads popped out, hissing and spitting out snake messages. The deep ink-like eyes revealed endless cruel and bloodthirsty desires. Suchen, who was still climbing Mount Mang, had no idea what was happening on the top of the mountain. While killing the poisonous insects that sneaked up on him, he recalled some of the habits of the Tianhan python. The reason why the Tianhan python is called the Tianhan python is because this monster possesses an extremely thin trace of the bloodline of the ancient giant monster, the sky python. Those who are very lucky and have a slightly stronger bloodline in their body, and who can successfully evolve after hundreds of years of cultivation, will become a giant Tianhan python, directly stepping from a 1-star high-level monster to a 2-star mid-level monster. Another reason why the Tianhan python is called this name is that this kind of monster likes to live on the top of snowy mountains and in places surrounded by clouds and mountains. It seems to live above the 9 heavens, and it has a hint of nobility. There are 2 attack methods of this monster beast, one is venom injection, and the other is to rely on the huge power of entanglement to strangle the prey to death. If someone is unfortunate enough to be entangled by several cold weather pythons and unable to escape, the outcome can be expected. Killing dozens of snow worms and ice scorpions along the way, Suchen finally reached the top of Mengshan Mountain. The cold fog here is extremely thick, which greatly affects the vision, and the cold air is astonishing. Even a 9th level Chi martial monk like Suchen, who has practiced physical training, feels that the cold air is constantly intruding into the body through the hairs all over the body, and has to mobilize his spirit. Have the strength to resist this cold air. I didn't expect the temperature here to be so low. Fortunately, I'm pretty good at physical training, and I can withstand most of the severe cold just based on my physical strength. If other disciples of the 9th level of Kaiwa come here, let alone fighting, they will have to spend a lot of spiritual power just to resist the cold, let alone deal with a group of cold pythons. However, after taking only 2 or 3 steps, Suchen noticed something was wrong and frowned. These black stones seemed to be dangerous. The intuition developed from years of life and death struggle made him slow down and carefully observe the exposed black gravel under the cold mist. The tip of the sword was gently raised, and a stone was shot out. It fell into the thick snow with a pop and disappeared. Apart from the howling cold wind, there was no other movement around. Suchen remained calm, and struck the tip of his sword more than 10 times in an instant. Countless stones suddenly shot out to the surroundings, some hit other stones, and some disappeared silently into the thick cold mist. Middle. As the stones spread, Suchen's right ear suddenly moved slightly, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Come out. Another stone was knocked out, and with a hiss, a big snake as thick as a bowl suddenly rolled out, opened its huge mouth towards Suchen, roared with a hiss, and a fishy wind burst out. It had thick scales. As Tianhan python, the stones Suchen hit on it could not cause any damage to it, but the pain was still there. Suchen was about to kill the beast with a sword, but suddenly the surrounding lake surface was like a strong wind blowing. In general, black waves rolled up, and thick cold pythons screamed from the snow and gravel and pounced on Suchen. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1223. Chapter 1223 Black Boulder. Black Ice Crystals. Snort. Are you trying to trap me with this crude plan? Suchen flipped his wrists and moved his toes rapidly, and suddenly after images and cold lights flashed in the thick fog. Countless cold weather pythons roared and pounced on Suchen, biting his neck with their sharp fangs, and closed their giant mouths. The Suchen in front of him suddenly dissipated, and all of them were thrown into the air. And then, the screams and screams continued to sound, and the green blood was cut into 2 pieces of crazy twitching and rolling snakes. The whole body intertwined into a dance. The snowflakes on the ground were scattered in all directions, and together with the ubiquitous cold fog, the world became even more misty. However, these could not confuse Suchen's sight. It had already been closed. With 2 eyes, he can judge the location and attack of the Tianhan python with only his keen hearing, and he is accurate. This skill alone is not something that ordinary Kaiwa realm disciples can possess. Even many Suanwi realm disciples can't possess it. Even a monk can't hit this level. Just like he just practiced Kinyi sword technique half a year ago, he used to pierce the flying leaves, but now he cuts through the ferocious python. The same precision, but different blood, cruelty, and decisive. Soon, he killed most of the 30-odd Tianhan pythons. Seeing that the situation was not good, the remaining ones immediately got into the snow and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Only the green blood and blood on the ground were left. The broken snake gradually became stiff and exuded a fishy smell. In fact, if it was just the Kinyi sword technique, Suchen would not be able to cut the thick-mouthed Tianhan python into 2 pieces with one sword stroke as easily as he did just now. It was the 2,000 kilograms of strength he had gained through months of training that gave his attacks the current power. As a 1-star mid-level monster, the Tianhan python only has huge strength and fangs, but it has no power at all. He couldn't get close to Suchen, so he was chopped into 2 pieces. Most of the cold weather pythons living here had been killed, and the remaining 11 or 2 could not threaten him at all. After scrubbing the dark star sword clean in the snow, Suchen walking gently on the snow, feeling the coldest place. While Suchen was looking for the ice beads, from time to time, 1 or 2 cold weather pythons that were not afraid of death suddenly emerged from the snow and attacked, but he easily eliminated them. The remaining Tianhan pythons no longer dared to offend this evil god. They hid obediently in the depths of the snow and never dared to show their heads again. As he walked, a piece of stone 1 foot wide and 8 feet high suddenly appeared in front of Suchen's eyes. The boulder, except that it was extraordinarily large, was no different from the other gravels. They were all as black as ink. However, the 1 foot space around the boulder was not covered by any cold fog. This feature immediately attracted Dust's attention. There must be something fishy about this stone. Suchen walked around the boulder, thought about it, took 2 steps back, raised the dark star sword, and struck it down hard with one sword. Dang! The dark star sword struck the black boulder, and sparks were thrown out, and the boulder was so hard that even the dark star sword, which was added with extraterrestrial meteorite and had always cut iron like mud, could not do anything to it. It only cut a little white mark on it. What surprised Suchen even more was that the dark star sword, the sword struck the boulder, but it seemed to be stuck by a magnet and could not be pulled back. Moreover, a layer of black ice crystals spread rapidly from the tip of the sword to the sword body, and in the blink of an eye it would cover the hilt. Even at this time, even a fool knows that these black ice crystals are not a good thing. Faced with such a strange and critical situation, Suchen decisively used all his strength, pulled out the long sword with all his strength, and immediately threw the dark star sword to the ground. Creaking, almost, the moment he was shaken off by Suchen, the black ice crystals completely covered the dark star sword, and continued to surround the gravel and snow under the sword. It seemed that without the support of the black boulders, the ice crystals covered the surrounding 3 feet. After that, it stopped spreading, and the color gradually turned lighter. After a stick of incense, these strange ice crystals slowly dissipated between the sky and the earth. Suchen bent down and picked up the sword, and it seemed that he was not hurt. However, suddenly, a subtle beeping sound at his feet attracted him. Looking down, the snow covered by black ice crystals actually cracked and turned into finer powder. When the wind blew, they disappeared. Got it? What a terrible cold! It actually froze the ice and snow into powder. Suchen was still frightened. Fortunately, he did not touch the boulder impulsively. Otherwise, he would suffer a lot if the cold air invaded his body. At the moment, he did not dare to act rashly, but walked around the boulder to observe carefully. Huh? There's a hole here. In the lower part of the boulder, there was a hole the size of a bowl. It was just a corner, so you couldn't see what was going on inside. Suchen thought for a moment, found a few stones, took 2 steps back, and used skill to pull it out. The stones hit the hole one by one. 1, then 2, and when the 3rd stone hit the hole, the boulder suddenly started to move. The boulder suddenly trembled, and then a faint hissing sound came from inside. After a while, a stiff-moving Tianhan python slipped out from inside. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1224. Chapter 1224 Millennium Eye Speed. Lift as lightly as heavy as possible. Small success. Suchen was shocked. Just as he was about to resist the possible attack, he found that the cold python was too weak. The snake's skin was wrapped in droopy wrinkles all over the body of the obviously shrunken snake. The snake wanted to raise its head to attack, but it fell to the ground weakly when it was halfway up, and could only make a low hissing sound. However, there is a section in its belly that clearly bulges out, taking on the shape of a ball. And this place is also the place with the deepest cold. It turned out to be a cold weather python that wanted to use the 1000-year ice jade to speed up his cultivation. It's a pity that he doesn't seem to have enough qualifications to make a breakthrough even if he is so thin. Suchen showed no mercy, randomly kicked up a stone and smashed the unlucky Tianhan python to death, and then used gravel to smash the snake skin and flesh around the bulge in the belly of the Tianhan python until the 1,000-year-old cold snake inside was the ice bead rolled out on its own. Taking a deep breath, Suchen dwarfed over the ice bead at a very fast speed. With a gentle sweep of his right hand, the ice bead was put into the storage bag. Call. First mission completed. Suchen frowned slightly as he looked at his right arm wrapped in ice crystals. Even if he didn't touch the ice bead, the cold air emitted by the latter still hurt him. The power of the 1,000-year-old ice bead should not be underestimated. His spiritual power is small. As soon as it started to work, ice crystals fell in all directions, but the cold air had damaged some of the meridians in the right arm, and it would take medicine and a period of recuperation to fully recover. However, it was still worthwhile to exchange this minor injury for 1,000 contribution points. Suchen did not go down the mountain immediately. Instead, he found a place on the top of the mountain to heal the frostbitten meridians on his arm, and then went down the mountain 3 days later. The remaining Tianhan pythons already knew that Suchen was a natural enemy they could not mess with, so they did not dare to show up. This allowed Suchen to adjust his condition to the best in just 3 days. The road ahead was full of dangers. Going deep into Juying Valley alone, he had to maintain the best condition at all times in order to calmly face all kinds of unknown dangers. Identify its direction. Without any movement, Suchen shuttled through the vast primeval jungle, as nimble as a vigorous bobcat. Before coming, he checked and found that the 8-eyed phantom spider was in a pine forest southeast of Juying Valley. Among them. This is the territory of the 8-eyed phantom spider. It is said that there are terrifying spider webs as big as a house everywhere. No matter whether it is a ferocious beast or a master of the Qi martial realm, once it is stuck by this kind of spider web, it is impossible to escape, and it will be the more the stuck prey moves and struggles, the tighter it becomes. And once it becomes the food of the 8-eyed phantom spider, it is really worse than death. The 8-eyed phantom spider will insert its long and thin needle mouth into the prey. The venom is poured into the body. This venom can corrode flesh and blood and has an anesthetic effect. At this time, the prey can only watch its internal organs being corroded bit by bit, but cannot struggle at all, and then is sucked up by the 8-eyed phantom spider until only an empty skin is left. However, most people cannot see the true face of the 8-eyed phantom spider's territory. Only the captured prey can be lucky to see their residence before death. Because, as long as the 8-eyed phantom spider is an adult, within a mile of the phantom spider's body, everything is covered with numerous illusions. People with insufficient cultivation cannot tell where they are. Maybe their heads are just under their mouths and they can't even notice it. That night, Suchen was lying between a tree trunk as usual, with no clothes on. In the Eagle Valley, he had to maintain a high degree of alertness every day. Even when he slept very lightly and always remained aware of the external environment. Sensitivity to any abnormal movement. If his prediction is correct, he will enter the territory of the 8-eyed phantom spider within 30 miles. He needs to take a good rest tonight, and tomorrow he will face a 1-star high-level man who is proficient in illusion. It is a monster, and like the flaming stone cow, it is the king of 1-star high-level monsters. Moreover, this enemy is more cunning, always hiding in the dark, and is far less clear-cut than the flaming stone cow. This is even more necessary. Suchen must be very alert, otherwise he may be attacked at any time. The Juying Valley at night is a paradise for wild beasts and monsters. All kinds of low hums and roars come from far away from time to time, but Suchen had become accustomed to it. The moon was dark and windless at this time, and the world suddenly became quiet. Suchen's eyes suddenly opened, and his body did not move at all. Instead, he only relied on hearing, smell, and sixth sense to judge the surroundings. Condition. Swish, swish, swish. There seemed to be some inaudible noises in the forest. A leaf was quietly folded off by Suchen, and he pinched it between his 2 fingers. Phew. With a sound, the leaves shot into the forest like sharp blades. Suchen, who is in the realm of lifting something as light as heavy, has touched the edge of the realm of Xiaocheng. Turning tender leaves into weapons is just one of the uses of this realm. In the darkness, Suchen could feel that the leaves he shot out pierced an unlucky little animal that came out to look for food, and then seemed to sink into the mire, making no sound. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1225. Chapter 1225 Charming Woman. Charming Illusion. Suchen broke off 3 leaves again, connected them into a line, and shot them out one by one. Suddenly, a silver bell-like laughter suddenly sounded from deep in the forest. A graceful figure slowly walked out of it. Seeing at night is a basic skill for monks. Even though the surroundings were dark, Suchen could still see the figure clearly. I saw an extremely beautiful woman walking towards Suchen on light lotus steps. The woman was dressed as a married woman, and she looked like she was 30 years old, but she seemed to be less than 20, which is the age when the peach is ripe and you can pinch the water. The young woman glanced at Suchen up and down with her charming almond eyes, covered her mouth and smiled softly. Yo! This young hero's skills are quite good. The little girl didn't provoke anyone, and she almost died at the hands of the young hero. The young woman waved her left sleeve, and 4 leaves gently shook out, which were exactly what Suchen had ejaculated before. When he saw this woman for the first time, Suchen had to admit that at that moment, he, who had always been as strong as iron, he actually lost consciousness for a moment. This feeling is very bad. If the woman in front of him is an enemy, he can just seize the opportunity of losing consciousness and kill himself in an instant. Suchen is so frightened that he no longer dares to look directly at this woman. Eyes, although those eyes are really beautiful and charming. The beautiful young woman raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at the young man in front of her. She seemed a little surprised that the young man could recover so quickly. She bowed her head slightly, revealing her slender white neck, running her hands through the hair beside her cheeks, raising her eyes and saying shyly, "Why doesn't this little brother dare to look into the slave's eyes? Is it something that the slave family did wrong, or, little brother, are you feeling guilty?" The night was as cold as water, but at this moment, Suchen suddenly felt a heat in his lower abdomen suddenly sweeping through his whole body. Every move of the young woman was truly charming, her voice was like the nightingale of an oriole, and it was as soft and sweet as steamed glutinous rice, and her breath was like orchid. There was a cry. The dark star sword came out and pointed directly at the woman in front of him. Roll. Otherwise, die. Suchen suppressed the restlessness in his body, turned his head and shouted sternly. Ouch! Don't be so cruel. The slaves will be scared. The young woman had a slim figure, but she just took 2 steps back, then stopped again, and turned into a pitiful look again, and she was about to cry. The little girl did not mean to seduce the little brother, but there are many dangers in this valley, and the little girl is not strong enough, so she can only use her meager skills to save her life. I hope the little brother can ignore the past grudges and take the little girl in for one night. The young woman raised her eyes and secretly glanced at Suchen. Seeing that the other person was still very wary, she actually covered her face with a handkerchief and started crying. Hearing this cry, the evil fire that had just been suppressed in Suchen's body suddenly rose again, and he wished he could immediately hug the woman in front of him tightly and cherish him. No, this woman is too evil, and the spiritual power in her body is somewhat out of control. Suchen bit the tip of his tongue, and regained some of his consciousness from the heartbreaking pain. Suchen stabbed the young woman with his sword, but the other woman swayed slightly and dodged it. Suchen was even more wary of this woman, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Ordinarily, even if her combat power was greatly reduced due to being hit by her charm technique, she would not be able to dodge the sword so easily. It seems that this woman's strength cannot be underestimated. Maybe even above yourself. The opponent was an enemy rather than a friend. Suchen's figure flickered, he ran away if he couldn't beat him, and disappeared into the night in an instant. He. You're a clever little guy. You can run fast, otherwise, the slave family wouldn't mind killing a handsome boy for fun. The young woman had no intention of chasing after her. Instead, she turned her head and looked into the dark depths, muttering to herself, "We have to hurry up. Brother Chiu's poison has penetrated deep into the bone marrow. If we don't get the eyes of the eight-eyed phantom spider to use as medicine, I'm afraid Brother Chiu will die." The young woman's eyes were reddish, her teeth were biting her red and plump lower lip, and she walked resolutely into the depths of darkness. While Suchen was sneaking, he kept an eye on whether the woman was catching up with him. After going around and around all the way, I found that she was not chasing her. After thinking about it, I felt something strange in my heart. He was now unsure whether this mysterious woman was a real person or an illusion. It stands to reason that this place is still 30 miles away from the territory of the eight-eyed phantom spider, so the eight-eyed phantom spider should not appear here. You must know that the eight-eyed phantom spider has a very strong sense of territory and will not easily go out of its territory. But don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of the unexpected. If the mysterious woman is an illusion created by the eight-eyed phantom spider, then it seems that the instability of spiritual power in her body caused by her own charm can be explained. But the eight-eyed phantom spider is only a one-star high-level monster. Although it belongs to the top level among high-level monsters, it shouldn't be able to dodge its own attacks so easily. Suchen was still very confident in his own strength. One-star monsters, no matter their level, were no longer in his eyes. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1226. Chapter 1226, Encountering Four-Eyed Phantom Spider. Meet the beautiful woman again. And if this woman is also a monk, then her presence here is worthy of scrutiny. This place is 100 miles round, so the eight-eyed phantom spider is worth exploring. It is very likely that she came here for the eight-eyed phantom spider. Regardless of these two inferences, Suchen must take action immediately, change his original plan, and go straight to the eight-eyed phantom spider's lair now. It's too late, something might happen. Walking among ancient trees and jungles at night was nothing to Suchen. Along the way, he was as light as a swallow and left no trace on the ground. He quickly approached the location 10 miles away from the eight-eyed magic spider's nest. The surrounding trees had all been replaced by towering ancient pines, all standing upright. From time to time, huge spider webs can be seen among the pine trees. Just as Suchen was about to pass by, he immediately heard a swirling sound, and a four-eyed phantom spider the size of a millstone crawled out from an ancient pine. The strength of different phantom spiders is very easy to distinguish, just look at the number of their eyes. The strongest one is the eight-eyed phantom spider with 8 yellow crystal-like eyes above its head, which is the king among the one-star high-level monsters. Its illusion ability is so strong that even a weaker Suanhui realm monk may fall victim to it. The second is the six-eyed magic spider, which is equivalent to the strength between the 7th and 8th levels of Qi martial arts among human monks. As for the four-eyed phantom spider in front of Suchen, its strength is only equivalent to the strength of the 5th to 6th levels of Kaiwu. Judging from its size, it should still belong to a young spider. But newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. This four-eyed phantom spider did not show Suchen's strength. Instead, it faced the prey that was several times larger than it, opened its mouthparts full of fine fangs and hissed at Suchen. Immediately, countless identical four-eyed phantom spiders crawled out of the dozens of ancient pines around them, swarming towards Suchen with their teeth and claws. But Suchen really didn't like this level of illusion. He sneered and pointed the tip of his sword directly at a certain four-eyed phantom spider. He completely ignored the other phantom spiders jumping towards him. Some of the four-eyed phantom spiders even crawled onto Suchen's back, opened their terrifying mouthparts and bit down hard, but he was still not afraid. Chi! The four-eyed phantom spider was stabbed through by the dark star sword, its 6 legs stiffened, and it died on the spot. Immediately afterwards, countless four-eyed phantom spiders around them also disappeared. The eyes of the four-eyed magic spider were of little use to the monks. Suchen wiped the green blood off the dark star sword, and with a thought in his heart, he walked towards a huge spider web. This spider web is almost 10 feet in diameter, and the spider silk is as thick as vermicelli. Occasionally, the blue sword light from the dark star sword flashes across, reflecting a crystal color. Suchen slashed at the cobweb with his sword, but it hit the ground. The cobweb was not broken, but it was pressed extremely long and its elasticity was amazing. Withdrawing the long sword, the cobwebs were still stuck to the sword. No matter how Suchen turned, shook, or trembled, he could not get rid of the cobwebs. Its toughness was really amazing. In the end, Suchen had to use his true strength and cooperate with the state of lifting weights to cut off several spider webs and withdraw the dark star sword. Looking at the spider web with a small hole in it with lingering fear, Suchen was secretly shocked. No wonder many prey are stuck in this spider web and can never escape. Unexpectedly, the spider web made by a four-eyed phantom spider has such strong elasticity, toughness, and stickiness, it is simply abnormal. It seems that the webs of 6-eyed phantom spiders, especially 8-eyed phantom spiders, cannot stick to them. Once they stick, even I will have a hard time getting out. Continuing to move deeper into the 8-eyed phantom spider's lair, Suchen carefully avoided all kinds of spider webs, killing 3 4-eyed phantom spiders and 2 6-eyed phantom spiders along the way, and finally came to the 8-eyed phantom spider. The territory of spiders. There are 3 tallest ancient pines here. Each trunk requires 7 or 8 adult men to surround it in a circle. The tree is more than 30 feet tall, which is almost twice as tall as other ancient pines around it. 3 ancient pines, the distance between them is almost 30 feet, and there are 3 super huge spider webs. The spider silk on the spider web is as thick as an adult's arm. It is hard for Suchen to imagine how strong such spider silk is. I'm afraid even it would be difficult for Suanwi realm monks to cut off even without special spiritual weapons. Suchen didn't want to touch the spider web, so he avoided it from a distance. He was surprised. This should be the nest of the 8-eyed phantom spider, but why was there no movement around it? Just as he was doubting, a sudden chill ran down his back. Suchen quickly turned sideways, and a foot-long scimitar with gleaming cold light passed by him. A beautiful figure turned around slowly. Suchen narrowed his eyes and said, "It's you." The beautiful young woman cast a wink at Suchen and said softly, "You reacted very quickly. This didn't even kill you, little handsome boy. What are you doing here? Could it be that after meeting my sister, I couldn't forget it and followed her all the way here?" The young woman covered her mouth and giggled, with a look in her eyes. "Just tell me if you miss your sister. My sister is not such a stingy person. It's okay to let a handsome guy like you take advantage of her." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1227. Chapter 1227, Seeing Through the Illusion. Face off against the 8-eyed phantom spider. The fragrance of these words is soft and sweet, making people's hearts sway. The young woman stared at Suchen with seductive eyes, stretched out her delicate fingers, and opened the thin shirt on her shoulders little by little, revealing her round, white and smooth shoulders. Biting her red lips, she seemed to be saying, "Little brother, come quickly. Come to my sister's arms." Seeing Suchen turning his face away, the young woman did not dare to look at her. She even laughed so hard that her branches trembled and she twisted tenderly. He took 2 steps closer to his waist and pulled back the thin shirt on the other side under his shoulders. "Little handsome boy, why don't you dare to look at the slave family? Is it because the slave's parents are not beautiful? Or, little brother, you haven't touched a woman yet?" Suchen suddenly turned his head, stared at the young woman, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and said coldly, "Don't say such useless things. You came here for the 8-eyed phantom spider, right?" The young woman suddenly changed into a pitiful expression, folded her arms and said angrily, "Oh, you talk so fiercely, you will scare the slave family." Suchen sneered, looking at the various postures of the young woman, whether angry or happy. A thoughtful look flashed deep in his eyes. "Little brother, do you want to see what's under the slave's clothes?" The young woman lowered the thin shirt under her shoulders a little more, and quickly raised the thin shirt, covering up the spring scenery just now, teasing the young man in front of her. Snort. "I would like to see it, but will you let me see it for free?" Suchen crossed his arms and taunted. The young woman's eyes moved, and she was slightly surprised by the change in Suchen's words. However, after looking carefully, she concluded that the young man was still very wary of her, so she covered her mouth and chuckled. His shoulders trembled, and the thin shirt on his body actually fell down a little, half of his back was exposed. Suchen looked at this woman's boundless beauty, but he kept holding the long sword in his right hand, which he had never done before. "Loose. My sister said that she is not a stingy person. If you want to see, you have to get closer so that you can see clearly." As the young woman slowly backed away, she pulled down the thin shirt on her upper body bit by bit, and the spring color became more and more intense. Suchen sneered and said loudly, "I want to see what kind of medicine you are selling in your gourd." He followed step by step. Seeing that her plan was successful, the young woman showed a hint of cunning in her charming eyes. She backed away and said in a sweet voice, "Brother, please don't talk nonsense about me. My sister will not harm my brother. She will only love my brother. It hurts me very much." In this situation, I believe any normal male present would be able to swallow his saliva and stare blankly at the young woman's upper body. But Suchen suddenly got angry. Without any warning, he stabbed the beautiful woman in front of him with his sword and said coldly, "You dare to show your little skills in front of me? 8-eyed phantom spider, show yourself to me." Whoa! The dark star sword pierced the young woman's heart, but it was as if it was piercing the air, without any resistance. The young woman shook it, and it shattered into pieces like glass and disappeared. Suchen had long understood this result. Breasts. In fact, ever since he saw the beautiful young woman here again, he has noticed something strange. When he faced the young woman before, even if he didn't look into her eyes, he was still distracted by her voice. But even just now, looking directly into the eyes of the young woman, I didn't feel any sense of charm. Apart from the white body, there was no such enchanting and passive feeling. It was obvious that this young woman must be an 8-eyed phantom spider. The illusion created was not the young woman herself. The real young woman might have harmed the poisonous hand of the 8-eyed phantom spider, otherwise the 8-eyed phantom spider hiding in the dark would not have predicted it and transformed into the image of the young woman to confuse Suchen. I have to admit that Suchen couldn't see through the illusion created by the 8-eyed phantom spider. But this did not affect Suchen's judgment. No matter how vividly the 8-eyed phantom spider copied the image of the young woman herself had that kind of the power of charm cannot be replicated by illusions. Suchen pierced the illusion and snorted secretly. Half of his plan to cheat was completed. What he wanted was the sudden result, to reveal the 8-eyed phantom spider hidden in the dark. A flaw. Sure enough. Suchen immediately felt a faint wave of demonic power on the left side. Suchen didn't even look at it, and passed the sword over. Squeak. A huge 8-eyed phantom spider suddenly appeared from the void. It is half the size of a room. Its 6 slender and sharp legs are like steel guns, and its whole body is purple. Especially its belly is shiny and smooth, and its whole body is covered with foot-long black spikes. 8 golden eyes are staring at it. Holding Suchan, he opened his mouth, and among the fine and sharp fangs, there was a fishy wind blowing towards his face. It was ferocious and terrifying. When Suchan saw the real master appearing, he was not polite anymore, raised his long sword from bottom to top, and threw it into the air. The 8-eyed phantom spider hit him. 2 dings. The 8-eyed phantom spider's steel spear-like long legs touched the sword twice in an instant, trying to block Suchan's attack. The other 4 long legs were slightly raised, stabbed hard at Suchan's head, chest, and abdomen.